chartreuse garnier with a glass of white wine that came from Alsace. I have no idea what it was. The combination was mind-shattering. And I said, I need to see this more often. I want to understand how this works.
This is Small Business Celebration, where we introduce you to successful small business owners at their place of business so that you can learn something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business and get your next big breakthrough. Welcome to the beginning of Season 7 here on Small Business Celebration. And we're going to be talking about the considerations to make when buying or constructing a new building for your business. We're also going to be talking about what to anticipate when entering a fiercely competitive market. And to guide us through all this is Jeramy Brown, the owner of JWB Distributing. Welcome to Small Business Celebration.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And for Visioneers who don't know who you are you, and what is it that you do?
Hi, I'm Jeramy Brown, owner of JWB Distributions. I'm a born and raised Bakersfield native, 5 generations, and I work in the distribution industry for the beverage, focused solely on wine, and I cover most of all Central California.
How did you get into the wine business?
The wine industry fell into me because I fell into it when I was very young. I lived in Europe. It wasn't for hospitality. I got in there because of sport, and I wasn't the best player, so I didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
But I was able to afford a little train ticket on Sundays on my day off, and I went down to Alsace, France, had a couple of francs with me. They weren't euros at that point.
Right.
And I had chartreuse garnier with a glass of white wine that came from Alsace. I had no idea what it was. The combination was mind-shattering, and I said, I need to see this more often. I want to understand how this works. I spent every other Sunday when I had a little money saved up, and I went as far as the train could take me there and back to get back to Amsterdam. And I started seeing different regions and understanding Normandy does it different than Munich does,
right,
so to speak, on the food and pairing. But wine was the one that always stood out for me, and I just started, that was my journey in understanding it better.
There's a rule in business that says the worst thing you could ever do is open a restaurant.
Yeah.
And yet you did.
People ask why, and it was like, I remember in high school the poem by Frost, The Path Untraveled. I'm sure I'm getting that one wrong there, but I think we understand the gist of it. And it was because I wanted to go the different path, but I wanted to take what I was doing and make it better. I wasn't looking to collect things, I was looking to collect experiences and also take people with me. Not everyone can jump on a plane like I was lucky enough to do at a young age and go to Europe and experience that.
Right.
So I wanted to bring that here. I want to have people understand that may never want to go there, that there is a reason to go there, and the purpose is to have that fulfillment and enjoyment of what they offer there.
What happened very briefly to go from playing sport in Europe and getting those experiences and coming back to Bakersfield and starting a restaurant?
It wasn't immediate. There was a gap. When I came back, I started working in youth soccer as well, coaching. That was kind of the background there. Enjoyed it entirely, but I had that missing element of working in restaurants. There is a rush to that. There is a high, so to speak. There's also that enjoyment engagement with so many different people. I worked in restaurants at a young age in town, families being Basque. There was the break for sport, and then I went right back into restaurant. And my life, 18, I've never worked in a restaurant again.
I'm never going to do that again.
Never say never. Never say you're never coming back. Never say you're never going to work in this industry. I wouldn't change a thing, but that's how it happened.
What prompted you to open the first restaurant?
So I worked there, and it was from a chef from New York who moved here. His wife's father was retired here and is at the end of his life. It was not the end of his life, but he was at the point that he wanted to be family. So they left New York, sold their restaurant, came here, and as a retirement project, he opened up Valentine, and I worked for 2 years for him. I went and worked at another restaurant because I needed to gain some more management experience. And at this point, he said, I'm leaving, I'm done, I'm gonna move to Santa Barbara.
I am really retiring this time.
Yeah. He has never said he's never coming back. He was true about that. And from there was the opportunity to buy and run Valentine, somewhere I worked at, understood, and had a deep passion for.
And when you took the restaurant and you bought the restaurant with Valentine's, you had a business partner.
Yeah, Jennifer Sanderson, my partner and my business partner and my life partner, yeah.
And it worked well for a long time, and then it started to not work. And without going into all the nitty-gritty details, you decided to close the business. Why was that?
We didn't know the building. We kind of foresee what things that were coming from there. Landlord was amazing, but we just understood, like, your home, you don't always want to rent, so to speak. You want to get to a point where you own, and we decided that it was time to close it down. We went through the crash of 8 and 10.
Oh, 08 and 10.
Yeah,
Wow,
well, we bought the restaurant 7, so think about that for a moment. You don't even have momentum. You're
Right.
not even getting back on returning anything of the investment. And then you hit the crash of 08. You barely get yourself back up. 10 hits, and as we were gaining traction, it was a slow rate. So we realized also too we were tapped out with that location being so small. It was time to pause and retool and rethink about how we're going to do this.
But there was one thing that made Valentine's really special. It had a different menu every night.
Yeah.
Tell us why this was so significant and important to you.
Yeah, it comes in twofold. And think of the business model. Number one, it was because of necessity, because we didn't have a large kitchen. So have that versatility to move it was so important. And on a business model for a restaurant, that's not a great idea because the cost of producing is much higher, to tell you the truth, and
Right.
the food waste on there. But we didn't have the largest size, so we took that and said, if this is our situation we're in for the business, because of the things we cannot control, which is the building, we went and changed it, and then we created momentum out of that with creativity. And that was A, using local farmers, B, going way more seasonal than we could ever be, because gave us that, and that was an edge in the competitive market. Not that we need to beat anybody out, it's what we really believed in.
Right.
We wanted to put the best product out, and why not use what's around us? And I love telling this story. I'll never forget the 3rd week in business, we're putting our produce order to a guy in LA, and the box is coming back and it has Wasco, Shafter, Lamont. So in my mind, so went to LA, sat there, how long, came back, and this is the product I'm using with, well, tell you what, I'm just gonna jump in my little Toyota RAV and go 15 minutes to Lamont and pick it up and get it over here, and it's just freshly pulled out of the ground. And everyone's like, it's radical. No, it's been done for a very long time. But it was nice to do that and to show off the farmer. We didn't have to do much. When your product is that fresh and superior, you don't have to do much. Same thing with a lot of the industries I'm in. If you source right, you're good.
After Valentine's, this is when your passion for wine exploded. Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, restaurants were brilliant. I always had a passion for wine, always growing and developing. Now I have this opportunity because I reach out and I want to go on a distribution level. There's a couple of brands that I bought as a consumer and as a customer for them. They're saying we don't have representation in the Central Valley. Truth be told, not a lot of wineries in the higher echelon think of the Central Valley as a place, but we sell a lot of wine. There's
Right.
a lot of consumers. And the linchpin is farmers. Farmers, that's their first choice. Spirits really aren't, because they have a connection to growing. They understand the cycle of wine. Beer, you mess up a batch, shut it down, start all over tomorrow. Wine, you get one shot a year. That's it. You get one harvest. You mess it up, it's really fragile and it's really intense, and that's why harvest is so important. Farmers in the valley get it. I think that's why wine's their first choice.
The key on this, too, is that you were getting requests for wines that the farmers here in town couldn't get.
Yeah, and access to it. Yeah, and let's go back to that journey. Let's go back to that moment of being this young person in France and going, I really want people in Bakersfield to see this. That's also me in Napa, like, this is amazing. These people are wonderful. Not only is their wine great, they're great people. I think the Valley will appreciate that. So that's the opportunity to share that that's always my purpose on this.
For Visioneers who don't know you very well, how many wineries do you represent?
It's 583. Again, this morning I got up early and counted for you.
583 wineries.
Yeah. Do I know them all personally? I don't, we did. Yes, I know them all in different ways and shapes and forms. I'm very lucky and feel fortunate to work with them. But this is global too. This is
Right.
every hemisphere from there. But yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? To
It
pull
is,
that out,
it is. Well, and this allows you to pair the right wine to the customer instead of shoving a certain brand of wine down somebody's throat.
Yeah, a lot of people ask, like, what's the hardest thing I have to do in my job? And the hardest thing in my job, believe it or not, is getting it to them. Supply chain is still a big issue in our industry, which just blows my mind. But I get to walk in with 583 different wineries. I'm a partner. When I walk into anybody I help out, whether it's retail, restaurant, or anything, even charity events can reach out to, like, can you help out with some? It's a partnership, and I'm making sure that the brands I work with and I understand deeply are going to mesh and work really well with consumer, or my client is a better way to say it.
Eagle-eyed Visioneers are going to be watching this and realizing that there's a sign behind you that says the kitchen.
Yeah.
This
no.
is not Valentine's.
No, we use that V word a lot. We just call it the V word. Valentine stopped in 2016. I stepped in to help out with the kitchen in 2018 with Dr. Hamel Cothry and Richard Yoshimura. It was a joint collaboration. that was so long ago, things have changed, and I'm still involved in this as well. I do have my hands in many pots, as I always like to do.
Right.
You know, ADHD is a wonderful thing to live with as, as an operator. But wine distribution is my number one that I do the most of. The kitchen I help out with. And there's some other restaurants in town that I'm lucky enough that have me come in sometimes on a basis to be a part of, to help out with as well.
Because you represent so many different wineries and there's so many different tastes out there,
Yeah.
how do you help a Visioneer go through and choose what kind of wines work for them? What are some basic guidelines that you use to help introduce people to wine, or at least refine the kinds of wines that they would enjoy?
That is such a great question, because this is what we deal with every day. I'm not a wine expert. I don't want to be intimidated. To tell you the truth, you're a taste expert. You know what you like,
Right.
and it's yum or yuck. This is not about what I think's right, it's about what you enjoy and what's right for you. So that is a great journey, because that's what wine is to me, is a path that's never ending. And we like to take people wherever they're at, wherever their tastes are, and start them somewhere and have them evolve and change as they go through time. The same food you loved as a kid is maybe not the same food you like as an adult.
Right.
And wine is the same way. It'll never stop. You'll start moving in different directions, and it's wonderful for that reason. So I always start out with like sweet or dry, where are you at?
Right.
And I always start out, what's your mood today? Like, what's
Sure.
going on? Was it horrible today? Are you having a great day? Are you feeling like totally overheated because it's July? Is our final December chill hitting you?
Right.
Because that mood is a part of what the experience is.
And if you need a new house to go with your expanding wine collection that you're getting with Jeramy Brown, might I suggest you get a new house from Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier agent with Watson Realty, born and raised and never left Bakersfield. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1@icloud.com today. And Mike Saba is also the sponsor of our first Visioneer question. And if you've got a question, you've got a thought, something you'd like to learn about here on Small Business Celebration, reach out to us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And your question could appear here on Small Business Celebration, just like Gabe, who asks, we are searching for a new site for our business. What considerations do you take into account when purchasing a new building to establish a lasting legacy for your business?
Buy more than you actually think you need on space, because expansion is a big deal of it. On this industry, for the restaurant, everyone does not put enough time and space into the kitchen and storage. They always think about the dining room and all the aesthetics, all the beauty. Pay more, and I think it applies to, I talk to other people in different industries too, pay more attention to the back end and to the production of it. Make sure you got yourself enough space.
The logistics.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What are some of the pitfalls that you have found for people who rent and don't take that time to get to look into the logistics? What are some of the pitfalls that they tend to fall into?
They end up spending way much more money on storage, or they're always renting product. Let's take a quick example. Restaurant finally has 100 people, books it out. They usually only do 30. Now they're going to rent plates, glasses, stuff that they normally would hold on stock because they don't have room for it. And by the time the second rental, they've already bought that stuff. And you know, if you're renting 7 or 8 times, if you're in a really good spot, you're doing that, quarterly, then yeah, you're spending way too much money on that.
One of the traps that some business owners have is they'll find a space that they fall in love with.
Yeah.
But they outgrow it, or their needs change, but they've got this very attractive long-term lease because it keeps the rent down. What are some of the things that you have found to help mitigate some of that, or some of the options that business owners may have when they're faced with that?
There's a client I work with up in Stockton, and they went into that same situation. And the great story about them is they took a small space and made it so popular and big that they had to expand. They went to another one, but they took that small space and made it an anchor. They made it they called it the Heritage Kitchen.
Okay.
And that's what it was. They drummed down the recipes, the stuff that they first did like 20 years ago, and made it like nostalgic feel. And that became a real staple in the market as well. It was pretty interesting, but they were booming on the catering side. So they went to an offsite and made a different ghost location there. That opportunity was great because most people say it has to be so narrow, this is what we do. They took the opportunity and opened up their horizons and really created something like having a legacy. The heritage part of the restaurant. Pretty cool, huh?
How did you get 583 connections to come to you for wine?
This is great because this happens in all business, and it wasn't just done, it's done groups. One distributor came in and they have close to like 110 clients, and they're in this one portfolio, and that connection is the top of that leads to all this.
Okay.
Just like in there. So we start with one, reputation builds up, then a second comes knocking. You're doing a good job of 2, then a third comes. So now I have 5 different distributors I work with, each in a network of somewhere between 80 to 120 wineries inside of each portfolio.
Is the hardest part of that tasting all the different wines and being able to discern what goes with what and being able to follow that bouncing ball?
I don't feel that's the hardest part. The hardest part is getting enough time to put all those people into the market to see them. The Central Valley is so interesting and so spread out. I did work for a small segment in downtown LA. Before I took on this venture of being JWB Distribution, I went to boot camp, which is I worked in downtown LA, considered the hardest market to work in the wine industry because there's just so many accounts, so many people, and so much volume. And when I walked away from that, I could seriously walk like 2 blocks and see like 42 accounts. Insane.
Wow.
To do that in the Central Valley, I would probably have to travel like 300 miles. You know,
Right.
like it's windshield time is what we call it.
Right.
My biggest challenge is getting all 583 properly represented with all the accounts we have with enough time to go see them.
And that brings us to the Visioneer game. Now, Visioneers, if you're not familiar with the way the game works, I have a random word generator here on my phone. I have no idea what the words that are going to be generated by the generator are, but more importantly, neither does our guest. And our guest has to take each of 3 words that I give him and somehow associate that word with his business. Now, Jeremy, you do realize that the fate of the entire wine industry is based on your ability to get these 3 words correct. Are you ready? Okay, your first word is gold.
Gold. We like to try to set a gold standard for the quality of distribution we put out, but we know that's not always true.
Cheesy, but I love it. Well done, you got the first one right. Okay, oh, here we go. Your second word is publicity.
Oh, publicity, so important in the wine industry.
Right.
Of letting people know that life is important, to have a good time and celebrate it with us.
Very well, that's the 2 for 2.
Oh, stress.
Okay, your third word. This is for all the marbles. If you get this wrong, nobody's going to drink wine ever again.
Okay, no pressure.
Recruit.
It is so important in our industry to recruit the top talent that are passionate about what we do because they want to be there to continue on this legacy of providing for everybody.
Wonderful, 3 for 3. The wine industry is safe at last.
Watch out.
And recruiting talent is important. It's the fundamental basis for all business. I know I can't do it without great talent, and neither can you. But as you grew your businesses and you went through one through another, it all hasn't been wine and roses, as it were. What has been one of the most colorful or fascinating experiences of something that went horribly wrong that you've learned from?
It's actually a horrible experience. It was also my proudest in the long term of it. We had a team that was running the kitchen for us at one restaurant, and it just wasn't sinking, and we decided to remove them all. The person who started the dishwasher within a matter of 3 months became the leader of the kitchen and was the most successful, productive, and creative, and most consistent people I ever worked with. And it was amazing to see someone who had no background, had no formal education, take an opportunity and grow so rapidly in such a short amount of time. It was amazing.
The key to this is you had to sack the entire staff. And the fear that a lot of business owners have is, I am an excellent judge of character. Just ask me.
Yeah.
And yet when you have to make that decision to get rid of everybody, that's an insult to your ego, is it not?
Yeah, no, you're right. And the truth is, none of us are great at interviewing people. I've never met anyone that's like flawless on hiring, ever. It never works out. The real way you know is if you work side by side with them with time, and that's the only way you can figure it out. And that's a gamble. You're also taking a risk as an employer when you're bringing on team. And if it doesn't work out, you've got a lot ahead of you. So it's important to be mindful of those moments. I never anymore, and this is just me, everyone's different, but for me, I don't hire based on their resume, I hire by the person and their life experience. Where are they going? What is their purpose in life? Purpose is a word I use a lot because it really defines what this is going to be about. I want to work with people that tell me one day they're going to own their business. Those are people I align myself. I have no care if they have nothing. They've never done anything I do before. They want to be a business owner one day. Those are the people I'm going to work with.
Was that the case for the dishwasher that became the manager?
He never said he wanted to be the owner, but he said, I want to run a kitchen, and that was enough. That's what it takes right there, the desire.
What were some of the characteristics that he had that when you sacked everybody said, I'm going to keep him?
He came in and said, I went on YouTube and I checked out how to do this, solved it on his own time. And that's all. If you're going to put your own time into it, that's it right there. We all know that. It's not 9 to 5. It never has been, never will be. If you're willing to put your own time in, you get what you give.
You mentioned a paradox, which is you like to hire people who plan on leaving. This is the number one fear for a lot of business owners. And yet this philosophy has worked for you. Why is that?
That's from my sporting background. You don't play forever. And anytime I played, there was always younger players coming through and the coaches would put the focus on them because there's always another generation coming. And that, to me, is the biggest joy. There are people I worked with in the past as co-workers and also as employees that have their own restaurants. I think that's amazing. High tides rise all ships. The better the people are that are around in our town, the better that makes the town.
How did you find your purpose?
It took a long time. It wasn't immediate. And it wasn't until probably like 2012 when I realized the purpose is to take all these things that I love and I keep trying to put on the menu and to offer it to people to have the option to experience the things that made my life better. I want to give that to them.
And that brings us to our second Visioneer question, which is also brought to you by Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier agent with Watson Realty selling Bakersfield homes since 1992. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1@icloud.com today. Visioneer Genie asks, we are expanding our business into a fiercely competitive field and have discovered a market that seems largely untapped. What challenges should we anticipate as we consider entering into this new arena?
Knowing the community, and if it's an area you're not familiar with, you think you have your trends figured out, and you think you also understand what the market's looking for, it gets really tricky. You have to test that market a lot more, and you have to be flexible to move quicker. Having done that myself, I thought we walked in, this is going to be brilliant, everyone's going to love it, and they did, and we realized we had to bend really fast. And I personally made the decision to hold on too long. My partner was smarter than me as usual, as they all are,
right.
And said we needed quicker. And once we did make that adjustment, it was a big thing. It's really difficult. Competitive markets are good. And I want to add something that's not part of the question, but I think is really important. Your biggest competitor is your mirror. I've always said that from day one.
Mirror?
Is your mirror. You are your biggest competitor. You are your biggest person that's going to hold you back. You are the person you need to gauge your highest standard to and make sure that you're doing everything you can and the best that you can.
When you left downtown LA, which is a highly competitive market, and you came to the Central Valley, this was a unique challenge because this was quote unquote untapped, and yet at the same time fiercely competitive. How did you approach that?
I went the conventional wisdom and system that everyone does in the industry for distribution for the first 4 months and said, nope, that doesn't even apply here, scrapped it, and I started thinking outside, and I went to towns like Lindsay, where there's 2 farmers that love to collect wine. They only go to Fresno eat. I went to them. I went to markets like Merced and found no one wanted to go there because it was too small, and gave them a voice and a chance to buy something because everyone really appreciates great product. Right. And not everyone gets people to bring it to them. So I went the different route. I went around the big norms and went into smaller pockets.
And that led you into the bigger markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it was a stepping stone that went that way. Not all the paths have to be the same way. What works for one business doesn't always work for the others. I had to reinvent myself, so to speak.
How did your life experience in Europe affect the way that you approach life here in the Central Valley?
Diversity. It's so important. It is the key to everything that we have, not only just about the planet, but also our country and who we are. Diversity makes such a big difference. Understanding different people, different ways, makes it so much more enjoyable to learn and share.
You get asked this 1,000 times a day. What's your favorite wine?
My favorite wine depends on what day it is, what's the weather, what's my mood, what's the season. It changes every day. I don't have a favorite wine. I just have a favorite drink, and it's wine.
It's no secret that there's a lot of business owners who are struggling right now.
Yeah.
What do you say to encourage them, to let them know that not all hope is lost?
I go back to a story of 2012. And I tell the story fondly to anybody who ever works with me, and it's not long-winded, but I'll keep it short. 2 people sitting on a table, we're short staffed on waiting tables. They order a lot of stuff, really don't talk much, they send everything back. Really? Undercooked, wrong, seasoning, and I'm the business owner, I'm also working in the kitchen and I'm doing double time, and I'm like, this food's not wrong, what's going on? I start doubting myself. This is really difficult to do. I stopped and listened to them, and they're going through a divorce. And they're deciding who gets the kids. I mean, this is heart-wrenching. who gets this, and like, there's nothing I can do right. They're in a bad place today and they're going through a bad moment. Is it ideal to do at a restaurant? I didn't think so, but this is their choice. And from that, I never forget, just make sure you're doing it right. Put the time in, get in early. I did everything right for that table. Everything I could, nothing was wrong. It was just their moment. And I never wanted to doubt myself to say, because someone tells me I'm doing it wrong, then I believe them. I have to make sure I understand that I'm doing it right. And we're all going through hard times. I am too. The wine industry in general is down. It's a fact. What am I doing? I'm putting more time than ever, but I'm here for the long run, and I make sure I'm doing it right. And that's the most important thing you can do.
Jeramy, this has been a privilege. Thank you for joining us here on Small Business Celebration.
I'm super grateful. Thank you for at least doing this. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And if Visioneers want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Hit me up on the gram. Anytime, I'm always there. I respond to those. It's JWB Brown. Yeah, that's the best way.
And after a quick message from Planned Exits, we're going to talk about the way to guarantee to have an enemy.
Thank you, Michael. Selling a business is far more complicated than selling a home. Business owners do not want to grab a for sale sign and pound it out in front of their business. You don't want to alarm your customers or your employees. If you'd like to understand the process of selling a company, visit my website at plannedexits.com.
The way to guarantee to have an enemy. When I was in college, I was a theater set design major, not an actor. When I was selected by the faculty to design the set for a show, and I was excited about the opportunity until I found out who the lighting designer was going to be, and my heart sank. You see, she was an absolutely brilliant designer. She was a very good communicator, very effective communicator, in fact, but she had this habit. You see, it didn't matter who you are or where she was, she would tell you you were wrong. And she would go into detail about everything that was wrong and how it was wrong and why it was wrong and everything else in the process, to the point that she alienated and made enemies of just about everybody in the department. And she and I, to say we were like oil and water was an understatement. We fought like cats and dogs, and there were points through the process of the show, people were very concerned, legitimately concerned, that this show may not happen. But in the end, cooler heads prevailed and the show did happen, and we moved on. And you can imagine my surprise when I found out in this last election cycle that she was running for political office. Yes, this woman who went through and told everybody, you're wrong. She made enemies of everybody, and yet she was running for political office. And not only that, it wasn't countywide, it wasn't citywide, it wasn't municipal district. This was statewide office. So my curiosity was piqued, and I went online. I went on what every good researcher does, go on YouTube. And I came across an interview that she had posted not that long ago. And as I watched it, I realized very quickly that the interviewer was diametrically opposed to her politically. And not only that, but was out to get her. And after about 15 or 20 minutes of this interview, my acquaintance said something that showed me she was going to win the election. When the interviewer would come after her, she would simply say, teach me, and ask a question. And the debate would then ensue, and the political discourse would happen. It was civil. And that's when I realized my acquaintance, the lighting designer, had learned a very important lesson. She had learned that the way to start a conversation, especially with somebody you disagree with, is to say, teach me, ask me, teach me what I don't know. How can I learn from you on your perspective? She had learned the lesson of saying, you're wrong, is the way to guarantee to have an enemy. I hope you enjoyed our conversation this week here on Small Business Celebration. I hope you learned something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business. And we'll see you here again next week when we celebrate another small business making a big breakthrough.
What not to do when savoring champagne. A, make sure the champagne is not warm. B, make sure you don't have a sharp blade, it needs to be blunt. And 3, do not do it in front of a wall you like. Does the glass matter? On the wine bottle, yes. The larger the vessel, the better the ship. The larger bottles of wine will actually age better because of the purity of it and all the molecules are held together there. The wine glass you drink of, yes, it does make a difference. It is important. Is it gonna be change what you do at home? You don't have to go buy all the kit. But if you do take something like a Riesling and pour it in a wine glass that's shaped for the Riesling, which is a tighter, there are differences and they're minor, but they're very much there. 3 ways to expand your palate is to go out to the farmer's market at least every Saturday and grab every piece of fruit or vegetable and just smell it and touch it. A second way to expand your palate is don't be afraid to order something off the menu you don't think you'll like. And the third is to experiment at home. The proper way to smell a wine is to make sure that you put not your nose in all the way. Actually have your mouth open, believe it or not, and put it just above the rim there. As you inhale, it'll give you a chance to pull in the aromas and actually get a second and third layer that goes through there. We do swirl wine, which is important. Why? This liquid's been in a vessel probably maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 years in the bottle. You need the molecules to open up and let the aromatics. We don't swirl to be snobby. We don't swirl to show off. We just want to get the aromas going. The proper way to hold a wine glass is to hold it at the bottom of the stem. The reason is you don't want your hand here creating heat, changing the temperature of the wine. The second thing is you might have lotion or hand soap, and this close actually puts the aromas there. The perfect temperature to store wine should be 55 degrees or lower. The other element is keep light out of it, natural light. UV breaks down actually the molecules quicker than heat does. And when you sip a wine, it's important to take the first sip. For me, in this industry, this is what we do. We bring a small amount in, we actually bring a little air, and this is what I do. I chew the wine. And a lot of people find this bizarre because when you drink wine, the taste buds only see it once. When you chew it, you get to get the full experience in there. It's not for the tame because there's tannin. It's really astringent in a way, but you actually understand the whole dynamic of what the wine's built around.